In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this jigsaw holder, which, besides allowing me to keep my jigsaw and all of its accessories handy, I can get more out of this Power Tools motor by using it to shake spray cans. I'll also show you how to apply this type of nitro lacquer spray. Recently, I've been thinking about making a holder that I can use to hang up my jigsaw to change its blades in a more convenient way. Besides, in my workshop, I use lacquer or spray paint quite often, and I was kind of tired of shaking the cans. These two ideas led me to designing this holder. In order to use the jigsaw, I only have to pull it up. If I need to change the blade, I only have to place it on the holder again. I made a wooden holder for the blades I use most often on the inside of one of the doors. On the other, I placed a set of blades I already had in my workshop. This makes changing the blades a lot faster than what it may look in this video. The quick blade change system that comes with jigsaws nowadays makes the process even faster. Inside the holder I store the accessories and this jigsaw and blades up to 180 millimeters long. Now I'll show you how the spray shaker works. My design is detachable thanks to a T-track profile and a slider. To use it, I have to turn it. This way it won't get in the way when I don't need it, and I have to change the blades. Once turned, you only have to attach the worn blade I used as a coupling in the jigsaw. In order to use this holder as a spray shaker, the speed of your jigsaw has to be adjustable so that you can lower it to 600 strokes per minute. The jigsaw stops allow me to adjust the height of the saw to level it with the shaker. My saw is not the best option for this design. Its battery is almost at the same height as its base, meaning there is not a lot of space to insert it between the two plywood pieces that hold it. Besides, its battery happens to be removed in the direction of the holder, so I can't remove it when I want to change the blade. I don't think you'll have these issues with any other jigsaws. If it has a cord, you won't even have to worry about batteries, you can just unplug it. If the base of your jigsaw is different, you'll only have to adapt the two pieces of plywood that hold your tool. You'll probably be able to make them a little longer. Placing the spray cans is very simple. They always have a bit of metal that sticks out between the two ends of the can. I have to insert the bottom part of the can under a washer and slide a stop that holds the metal on the other end. Due to safety reasons, I made a couple of doors out of wood and acrylic. I think they're indispensable for this project. They can be made with just wood, without the acrylic, but I think being able to see what goes on inside the holder is interesting. Shaking the sprays correctly is more important than it looks, and not many people do this the right way due to the effort and time it takes. If you don't shake your varnish enough, it might not dry in the appropriate time, and you might use up all the propellant gas in the can before the varnish, wasting a lot of the product. After approximately 60 seconds, the lacquer has been shaken enough to start varnishing. I made an ingenious lock with a metric 6 T-bolt, a steel pipe, and a piece of wood that I sharpened so that it snags the cans. This shaker can be used with almost all kinds of varnish, glue, or polish sprays. The most common ones are usually 200 millimeters long and 65 millimeters wide. This tool can shake cans up to 19 millimeters in diameter, such as this car polish that weighs almost 1 kilogram. I made two pieces that I can adjust to the diameter of the cans. It also allows me to shake small plastic cans. For this, I made another log with a piece of wood. I designed this holder with the intention of hanging it on the wall. This way, the vibrations that the jigsaw makes while in operation are almost completely absent. This is the 3D design included in the plans for sale on my website. I'll leave a link in the video description if you're interested in supporting my work or making your own holder. This is the Nitro varnish spray sent to me by the folks at Nitrolac so that I could try it out. It's made up of 2 primer cans. It's the sealer for nitro lacquers. One is for transparent finishes and the white one is for colored finishes. 2 nitro lacquer cans, one glossy and one matte. Finally, they also sent me 2 opaque nitro colors from the wide range of colors available on their website. This is the Nitro color catalog you'll find on their store. First, we can see the translucent colors with the most usual hues. This is the opaque metallic color with some very interesting shades. Lastly, there are opaque colors, also known as solid. They also send me a set of sandpaper with Velcro of several grits, from P240 to P3000. I think it will be very useful for sanding uneven surfaces, as well as a spray gun adapter for use with the spray cans, which I'm also looking forward to trying out. I've never used these solid spray colors before, and I'm curious to see how black gloss will look. I'll use the white primer as a base. I'm going to try to lacquer this piece of MDF. First, I'll use P240 sandpaper. I'll shake the can in the station and then attach it to the gun. I apply a fine coat of sealer and it seems the gun works wonderfully. These kinds of sealers are meant to be used on porous wood, and MDF tends to soak in quite a lot of lacquer. I'd like for the sealer to cover enough so that I only need 1 coat of the black color. After 30 minutes, I can sand down the base, this time with P400 grit. Now in the same way, I apply another coat of the opaque black gloss. After another 30 minutes, it's dry to the touch. The result is amazing, and I only had to apply 1 coat of coloring. Now, if I wanted a deeper and glossier finish, I could apply a couple of coatings of transparent nitro lacquer gloss, and then I could even polish the nitrocellulose with a buffing wheel to achieve the glossy finish you find on electric guitars. Now I'm going to show you how to use these sprays to varnish birch plywood and black tinted MDF. I had already sanded the interior of the station before putting it together, and now I only have to sand the exterior with P120 grit. I got lots of emails asking me about the kind of finish I use in my projects, and in the case of small projects such as this one, I usually use matte nitro lacquer. The solvents of nitro lacquer are dangerous. Remember to use a good face mask when varnishing and sanding with these products. First, I have to detach as many parts as possible. We must be careful not to warp the edges with the sandpaper. This requires a little practice. It's not necessary to set the sander at full power. A medium speed is advisable. I usually leave the screws embedded by a few tenths of a millimeter so that I don't touch them with the sandpaper. In the joints between the side and the base, I make it so that the side sticks out a few tenths of a millimeter so that I can make it level with the base later with the sander itself. On the edges of the station that was already assembled, we must be careful not to warp the wood. To soften the edges, I use a block of wood and P120 grit. I'm going to start with the MDF doors. First, I apply a fine coat. The edges of the MDF are going to be the most difficult part to cover, so I'll apply twice as much product, applying lacquer again also after turning the piece. We can see how fast this Nitrolac nitrocellulose lacquer dries when used on MDF. Birch plywood is not very porous, so it's going to be a little harder to cover, even on the edges. Here we can see the MDF needs a second coat. Birch could be left as is with one coat, but I'm going to apply a second coat after sanding it down with P320 grit. I use a block of wood and sandpaper to avoid sanding off too much of the applied product from the edges and small parts. I only use the sander on larger parts. Nitro lacquers aren't as hard as polyurethane or polyester based ones, but the advantage is that they're much easier to apply even as a spray. They're much easier to sand down, and unlike those other lacquers, the various coats applied with nitro lacquer merge into a single layer. The other major difference is that we don't need two components, unlike with polyurethane. Nitro lacquer dries through the evaporation of its solvents, not due to the reaction of two components. Besides, they dry really quickly, reducing the endless waiting periods between coatings. When we're done, it's important to turn the spray and hold down the nozzle for a few seconds to drain its inner tube and prevent the lacquer from obstructing it when drying. This way you can continue using it in perfect condition when you need it. After the second coat, both materials look perfect. Now I'll show you how to make this jigsaw holder station. First of all, we have to cut all the required parts to size with the table saw. Also, with the same saw, I'll make a rabbet so that I can install the back. This can also be done with a router. Finally, I'll cut a dado so that I can install the T-track. I'm going to stick the printable template included in the plans on the board to make it easier to machine the side where the jigsaw is going to be installed. To carry out the machining operations, I'll use the column drill, the table saw, and a router to bezel the inside edges. Now I'll drill holes for the screws which allow me to assemble the station and a hole for the threaded insert. Now that it's easier, I'll sand down the interior sides. I'm going to place the insert using a homemade jig to ensure it's square. I'll use another homemade jig to fasten the screws and assemble the station. The holes I made earlier on the sides will come in handy as a guide. I'll also use a piece of a board as a spacer to install the middle shelf. Now I'm going to machine the piece on which I'll place sprays. First I cut some none-through holes for the two pieces that will center the spray cans. I made a slider out of HPL and then I'll drill 3 holes. I'm going to thread them so that I can attach it to the T-track profile and the plywood piece with M5 bolts. Here we could also use wood instead of HPL and wood screws. This is the T-bolt I'll use for the spray shaker. We can use it as is, but I want to make it fit a little more tightly into the profile's channel, so I'm going to trim it a little to insert it by turning it 90 degrees. To make the hole for the axis, I'll use a vise. With a hacksaw, I'll cut the channel so that I can insert the jigsaw blade. As I said before, I use the sanding disc to wear down the blade's teeth. I'm going to install the jigsaw on the station for a moment to find the position of the hole for the axis on the blade. To do this, the blade must be placed as far back as the jigsaw will allow it. After that, I must leave 6 mm of play between the piece which supports the sprays and the side of the station. To drill a hole in the blade, you may have to soften it with heat. As a rotation axis, I'll use an iron nail, which I'm going to hammer a little to warp one of its ends to ensure it won't come loose from the axis. To hold the spray cans, I'm going to machine a small piece of aluminum and a piece of maple hardwood. Now I'm going to make the pieces that will allow me to attach the jigsaw to the station. I'll use 2 pieces of hard 9 mm plywood, one of them cut at a 45-degree angle. I'll glue them together with cyanoacrylate. After finding out the exact position of the jigsaw, I'll screw these pieces to the station. It's time to make a stop for the jigsaw. In my case, I'm going to use a 4 mm piece of acrylic. I'm also going to machine the 2 pieces that will let me position the sprays in a more convenient way. I'll use 2 pieces of plywood, previously cut at a 45-degree angle. I cut the back to size, and I'm going to use the previously drilled holes to fasten it to the station. I'm also going to install the 2 upper parts and the 2 hinges that will let me open the top. Now I'm going to cut the 2 doors with a table saw. I'll cut the required rabbet to install the acrylic with the router table. I'll also use the router to cut a small recess to open the doors. Finally, I'll drill the 2 holes needed to install the cabinet hinges. I screwed the hinges and the acrylic to the doors. Lastly, I'm going to detach the blade set so that I can install it on the inside of one of the doors. On the other door, I'm going to install a homemade wooden blade holder. Thank you for watching this video until the end. I'll see you again in a few days.